that I want to thank the honourable member who speaks for, I'm not sure which party, but certainly the honourable member, Mr. Kim Swan. And I say that because last week when he was abroad, I had to refute the comments that were going viral that he had crossed the floor. I think he's made it crystal clear by his comments today that he hasn't crossed the floor, and I think that that probably speaks louder than words. Now, I also heard a lot of poppycock about 7 years of plenty and 7 years of I suppose, fat, and 7 years when it was hardship and how the government managed that. Let me be very clear, because I think it's very important that we have a reality check. And we don't have a lot of myths being perpetrated by those who are seeking to politricks. And I want to say firstly that when there were surpluses and when there were the years of plenty, you know what this government did? It made sure that it kept borrowing to a minimum, and it used the excess revenues to fund capital projects, and it invested in capital investments, and also made sure that it kept the tax increases down. You also, Mr. Acting Speaker, will recall that this government wrote off and about $30 million for Bermuda Housing Corporation. Instead of making them have to borrow money, we decided that we would provide it with an injection. We also, in terms of the Public Service Superannuation Fund, injected $50 million. You know, as I've often said, Mr. Acting Speaker, it's easy to be, I suppose, a little bit preachy and pompous when you are talking about what your record was, when you can also believe that you can perpetrate some revisionist history. Not so. Let's get some facts out there. Let's also talk about, as you look at debt, you've got to look at debt as to what the purpose is. And you've already heard from honorable members from this side, when we increased, which it's still on our books, the $200 million, increased the debt in terms of writing a guarantee for NTB. Not likely to be called, but it certainly had to be listed. So that's also why you saw monies being pushed up. I think it's also very important to look at debt as to what it provides in terms of birds in the hand and benefits to the people of Bermuda. And if we are going to focus, Mr. Acting Speaker, on issues of wastage, as the honorable member who so vehemently and passionately lambasted the government in that regard, then let's also get some context. Because even though the honorable opposition parties may be loath to talk about records, let's talk a little bit about that. Because when you want to talk about financial hardship, and since we didn't like Topsy just arrive at this place, let's focus a little bit on some of what was done. Because there's always this certain almost arrogance acting as if that we have clean hands when those who speak for the honorable opposition speak. And I think that if you were to look and take some time, and I would certainly encourage all those with some time on their hands to look at some of the past Auditor General's books, both in terms of 1993 to 94, 94 to 95, 95 to 96, 96 to 97, 97 to 98. And if you were to cast your mind back to that, just let me tell you just a few of the things you might find. You might find payments that were not properly documented under contracts. You'd find an inability to locate contracts for which payments were made. You'd find a failure to execute properly approved change orders when the scope of contracts was subsequently amended. You'd find payments being made under a contract that hadn't been signed and contracts that were not signed till after the services were provided. You'd find project overruns, you'd find contract irregularities, and you'd find that the 1998 capital project overspend. And you certainly would find that there was about, $20.4 million for Cedar Bridge and the middle schools. You'd find unfunded pension liabilities increased from 165 million to 219 million. You'd find the airport in 1988 and Westgate had increased, and it went from $9 million and mushroomed to $26.5 million. And you'd find that 85, 86, or 88, 89 report speaks to the escalation of the cost of the airport renovations from $9 million to $26.5 million. And it was driven by changes by renovations during the currency of the project and expenses related to the nature and additional work being performed as structural problems were revealed. And you'll see that the contractor that was not being able to provide a 7.5 performance bond, despite this being a condition of the form of tender. And you'd find $2 million of government funds effectively being given to the contractor when the contractor ran into financial difficulties. And you won't find that because Paula Cox said it, you know. You'll find it because it was in the Auditor General's report. So let's talk as if we are holier than thou, because then I'd say they would be speaking with forked tongue. So then you talk about financial hardship, and let me be very clear. Let me be very clear. I'm not blaming it, Mr. Acting Speaker, on anybody. But if you want to start throwing glass stones, make sure you don't have a window in your house. That's what I'm saying. That's what I want to say. If you want to start throwing stones, make sure you have no windows. So don't come up here and talk with passion and vehemence when it's all based on a deck of cards. Let's get real here. You want to have a reality check? This government is saying that we are coming to this parliament to assist the people of Bermuda. And you can build all the flowery language you want, and you can dismiss the international economic downturn. Not one person, and I would challenge any of you, will say, fine, on this government side, that we have said that all the issues in the world or in Bermuda are due to the economic downturn purely. But it certainly is a significant contributing factor. And either you live in cloud cuckoo land or you don't understand the way the world works as an interdependent place. Now, are there mistakes? I'm one of those who's clear to say there have been mistakes. But don't you stand on your high horse and hobby horse and act as if you are clean as you can be, because that would be poppycock. So let's just debunk some of those myths right now. And every time you say it, I'm going to dispute it. So let's serve notice. But what I will say, Mr. Acting Speaker, is that this government realizes that you got to be sensitive to the needs of the people. And this government also realizes that you have to use the tools at your disposal with regard to legal instruments and legislation to use it in a dynamic fashion. And also, let's be very clear that with regard to going into uncharted waters with pension regulations and allowing people to dip into the pension scheme and their pension plans, you don't set up a model that is very inclusive. You are selective and you isolate those items of particular concern and vulnerability for people. And then based on practice, there have shown to be examples where they need help. Then you look, you assess, you reassess, and you decide, is this a fitting need? And once you take that position, you can put your hands on your heart and say, we're doing the right thing. Because that's what we're here to do, Mr. Speaker. Now, in respect to a couple of the questions, those that were germane to the language and to the legislation that's actually before us, instead of some lofty launch into some politics, which is based again on a flawed house of cards. It was pitiful, really. The applications have been steadily increasing over the past several months. In addition, a significant increase in requests and interviews has been experienced, with rent representing the majority of them. The $100 fee can be taken from a member's pension fund, and notwithstanding the fact that you say, some have said, why have a fee? But that's for the very reason that on a schizophrenic basis, you've asked, why should we even open it up? The point is that you want to make sure that you are not making it too easy for people to come. You want to not have vexatious claims. You want people to think before they make the application, because it is a serious issue to go into the pension funds, and it has to be justifiable, and those who are making the decision as independent arbiters are certainly going to be very critical in terms of looking at whether the conditions have been met. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, it's a pleasure to see you back in the chair. Just since it seemed that one of the honorable members, again, from I'm not sure which party I should be speaking to, but I think it was the Honorable Mr. Charles Swan, he asked about the approved applications. And I think I've already said it in my brief, but in it, so just to reiterate it, so it helps him, it was 37 for education, 31 for in terms of mortgage, and 20 for medical. And I think, Mr. Chairman, with the Deputy Speaker, I'm quite pleased to have gotten the support of members on both sides, notwithstanding that I had to listen to a lot of poppycock as we got there as a price for that. But I certainly would like to move that the draft regulations be approved and a message sent to His Excellency the Governor.
Thank you, Honorable Premier.